Okay, so you just had a snake turn into a staff, and now you have a problem believing that a staff could eat another staff. Y'all, it's all a bunch of miracles. Yet Pharaoh's heart, what? It became hard. He wouldn't listen. Just as the Lord said, this is what's going to happen. It's going to get worse and worse and worse, just like I want it to. I'm hardening his heart. I'm making him not listen because I'm going to show him more and more and more powerful, indisputable miracles that will be remembered for all time, whether you're a believer or not, just to show I am God, the only God, the most powerful God. Whatever you got to throw at me, I can outdo it. My snake can eat your snake. And then I'll turn it back into a staff, and the staff will eat another staff. What God's saying is, I am the only true God. And I'm going to prove it to the world. That's the point of this whole deal. So I'm not going to read through every one of these plagues, but you should. Read about the plague of blood. Read about the plague of frogs, especially. Because they just wanted one more night with them. Why would we do that? Why would we say, let me just sin a little bit longer? But we do it. When we could be delivered of it, but we just hold on to it. The plague of gnats. And people think, oh, it's a plague of flies. How bad's that? No. Imagine you're sitting in a room and everything in the room is covered with gnats. Everything. You are, and everything in the room, from ceiling to floor, furniture, everything's covered. Next, same thing. This time it's flies. I just had 2 flies in the sunroom yesterday. It annoyed the fiddle out of me, and I was just like, I can't catch this thing. Imagine if the whole room was covered in them, walking on them, squishing them. And after a while they stink and maggots are coming out. The plague on the livestock is in chapter 9. Then the plague of boils. Imagine just the pain of it. The plague of hail and what that would do to any ability to feed yourself, because all the crops will be destroyed. Read about the plague of the locusts, same thing. Everything's getting destroyed, not to mention they're gross and they're on everything. Everything. Imagine they're just all over you. You can't get them off. There is no relent. You can't shut a door. They'll be in there too. You can't go get in the shower. They'll be in there too. They're going to be everywhere. Then the plague of darkness. That's a really bad one. And then the plague on the firstborn. And it's heartbreaking. And then in that's in chapter 11. Then in chapter 12, the Passover and the festival of unleavened bread. And this is the month for you. The Lord says to Moses and Aaron, this is the month for you to be the first month of your year. Tell the whole community of Israel. On the 10th day of the month, each man should take a lamb for his family, one for each household. If any household's too small for a whole lamb, they must share it with the nearest neighbor, having taken into account the number of people that are there, and you to determine the amount of lamb needed for each person. It's so technical, and yet God's very clear how to go about this. And if you read on, you get all the way to verse 17. Celebrate the festival of unleavened bread, because it was on this very day that I brought your divisions out of Egypt. Celebrate this day as an everlasting ordinance for the generations to come. They still practice it. On the first day of the month, you are to eat bread made without yeast. For 7 days, no yeast is to be found in your houses. Wherever you live, you must not eat leavened bread. Go at once and select the animals for your family and slaughter the Passover lamb. Dip the blood, get a bunch of hyssop, dip it in the blood in the basin, and put some of the blood on the top and on both sides of the door frame. None of you shall go out that door of your house until morning. When the Lord goes through the land to strike down these Egyptians, he will see the blood on the top and sides of the door frame, and he will pass over that doorway. And he will not permit the destroyer from entering your houses to strike you down. There is a lot in that, because it isn't actually the Lord, it's the angel of the Lord, it says later. And he says he doesn't permit the destroyer. This is a destroyer angel, or an angel of death that is sent to kill, to cause death to come about, because this is a God of life. So he has an angel that will perform that, to enter your house and strike you down. Obey. This is in verse 24. Obey these instructions as a lasting ordinance for you and your descendants. When you enter the land that the Lord will give you as he has promised, observe this ceremony. And when your children ask you, what does the ceremony mean? You tell them it is the Passover sacrifice of the Lord who passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt and spared our homes when he struck down the Egyptians. Then the people bowed down and worshiped, and the Israelites did just what the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron. At midnight, the Lord struck down all the firstborns of Egypt, from the firstborn of the Pharaoh who sat on the throne to the firstborn of the prisoner who was in the dungeon, and the firstborn of all the livestock as well. Pharaoh and all of his officials and all the Egyptians got up during the night, and there was a loud wailing in Egypt, for there was not one house that didn't have someone dead. The Exodus. During the night, Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "Get up, leave, 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 go, you Israelites. Go worship your God that you've requested. Take your flocks and herds as you've requested. Go and also bless me." The audacity. The Egyptians urged the people to hurry and leave the country, for otherwise, they said, we'll all die. So the people took their dough before the yeast was added. That's why it was unleavened. They didn't have time. They had to hurry up and get out of there. That's the whole symbol that they still use today about the Exodus, and to thank God that he got them out of slavery. The Israelites did as Moses said, and instructed them, and asked the Egyptians for articles of gold and silver and for clothing. And the Lord made the Egyptians favorably disposed towards the people, and so they gave up whatever they were asked for. So they plundered the Egyptians. That was really important. I haven't read any notes on this, but I could just tell you right now, when you plunder, it shows that you've had victory. They also had carried out that dough on their shoulders in their kneading troughs, wrapped in clothing. You've seen when bread's being done that way. So just imagine this whole scene of all this stuff being carried away. The Israelites joined from Ramses to Succoth. They were all about 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children. Many other people went up with them. So there's no number given there. And they had large droves of livestock, both flocks and herds. With the dough the Israelites had brought from Egypt, they baked loaves of unleavened bread. The dough was without yeast because, why? They'd been driven out of Egypt and they didn't have time to prepare the food for themselves. That's verse 39. In verse 40 it says, the length of time that the Israelites people lived in Egypt was over 430 years. It was 430 years, not over. At the end of the 430 years, to that very day, that's why I want to make it clear it didn't say over, to that very day, all the Lord's divisions left Egypt, because the Lord kept vigil that night to bring them out of Egypt. On this night, all the Israelites are to keep vigil to honor the Lord for the generations to come. In verse 43, it talks about the Passover regulations, and here they are. No foreigner may eat it. I remember, I don't know, I guess I'd be considered a foreigner, but I did go to a Seder dinner once at a Jewish synagogue, and they were doing one, and you could actually participate. And hope that was okay. Any slave, I think it was to teach you about this, that you heard the whole story. I've also seen Light of the Messiah, which is a Messianic Jewish group that shows you Jesus from the beginning all the way to the end of the whole Bible. They show you Jesus all through the Old Testament and how he fulfilled all those prophecies in the New Testament. And coming from a Jewish person who knows the in-depth part of this that we're learning even deeper than we know it, it was amazing to watch. And that on that Seder plate, it looks almost like a boiled egg plate. It's got little divots in it, and that there's something in each one that is symbolic. One of them I remember was salt water, the tears of Egypt, and so many things. I won't get into that, but you can look up Seder dinner and the symbols, and you can learn about that, or see if you have a Messianic Jewish temple synagogue that you can go learn about that from someone who believes in Christ but was Jewish, and now they're a Messianic Jew. They don't lose their Judaism. They just add to it that they actually do believe that Jesus is the promised Messiah and that he is God. And wow, that's quite a person to be around. I really enjoyed it. But anyway, no foreigner may eat of it. Any slave you have bought may eat of it after you've circumcised them, but a temporary resident or a hired worker can't eat it. It must be eaten inside the house. Don't take any of the meat outside the house. There's symbolism in all this, I guarantee you. Do not break any of the bones. You do know that Jesus' bones were not broken when he was on the cross. The whole community of Israel must celebrate. The whole church must celebrate. A foreigner residing among you wants, I'm drawing an analogy here. That's not what that says. A foreigner residing among you who wants to celebrate must have all the males in his household circumcised. Then he may take part like one born in the land. No uncircumcised male may eat of it. Why is this? It's because it is a covenant fulfillment. And so it's a big deal. All these symbols matter. Why? Because they're going to be fulfilling things that will make sense later. It has to be done exactly the way God says so that we'll get it. That they got it and we'll get it for generations to come, not just then. The same law applies to both native born and to the foreigners residing among you. All the Israelites did just what the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron, and on that very day the Lord brought the Israelites out of Egypt by their divisions. I think we're going to stop there. And we'll get to chapter 13 through 15 next. I hope this is really exciting you about the stories that are our stories that came through the ancient world, through God's chosen people. Then he made a covenant, so a covenant people, the Israelites. And all their descendants will get all the way to Jesus. And then through Jesus, we can be grafted in. The Gentiles can even be grafted in. And we'll all be God's children, those who choose to believe on God. It's so important that we do that. I hope y'all are enjoying all this. It's our story. It's his story. And we're a part of the plan if we so choose to join him where he's already at work. I hope y'all are enjoying it. I love you guys. Please comment below and hit like. I love you. Bye.